Welcome, everyone, to our program with Skip Montello. We are so excited to have him here. Just going to make sure everyone is muted before we continue on. Skip Montello as a local photographer. His passion for photography developed during his career at the Polaroid Corporation, where he spent more than 30 years as a photographic scientist, engineer, and technology leader. Over the years, he has moved from film-based media to digital. He has a deep love for the Cape Ann area in which he lives and is constantly inspired by the ocean and surrounding woodlands. When not photographing, he is a sport fishing charter captain, sailing instructor, and outdoor writer. Skip's photography is frequently displayed in many juried photography exhibits around the country. His photography has earned numerous awards at the Art Associations of Rockport and Newburyport and the Worldwide Nikon Small Wonders Competition. He has exhibited in several solo exhibits, including art associations, local cafes, and public libraries. His work is held in private collections in the USA and in Europe. Skip is a graduate of Northeastern University, Engineering and Science, and is a U.S. Navy submarine veteran. Welcome to photographer Skip Montello. Thank you so much for being here, Skip.
Oh, thanks for the great introduction, Mari. Thanks for everyone for coming. So we're going to start, I guess, right now, Mari?
Yeah, let's start. Let me say just real quick, we are going to do, Skip's going to do his program. And at the end, there will be a video. So don't go away for the video. Thanks, Skip. Let's start.
Okay. Can everyone see that screen?
And you can chat, put a chat in. We can't see it yet, Skip. Let's make sure. There we go. There it is. Great.
Okay, great. Let's start. Introduction to digital photography. We all do digital photography today. We have smartphones and cameras and so forth. So what I'm going to try to cover today as an introduction is definition of digital photography, some of the equipment that we use, and on cameras, the settings and controls. Then we're going to talk about types of photography and composition, and then later processing and how we can go about sharing that photography with others in the world. So let me begin. So up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that little inset there. It says photography is an art of observation, has little to do with what you see and everything to do with the way you see them. And I think that's really true for some of the best photographers in the world. It's how they see the world. But I don't know if the rest of you feel that way, but that's how I feel. And, photography is an art and it's created by light. And not like the artist with a pencil or a pen or a paintbrush. We use a device, a digital camera or, a phone or whatever it is to take that image. So it's an art form, just like drawing and painting. Photographers use their camera to make us see life in a different way, feel the emotions, and record stories and events. What are the characteristics that make a good photographer? For me, I wrote these. It's my curiosity. It's a sense of wonder that makes for original work. It's patience to be out there at the right time, the right moment, and to have a camera with you, or at least a phone. And it's a passion to just keep going out and to learn more and do more and be more. That's how I look at what makes a good photographer. And in my time at Polaroid, I was around a lot of great photographers working in the labs. And at one time I had the pleasure of sitting at a meeting with the great Ansel Adams, to talk about being awestruck. He used to use Polaroid film in the old peel apart in the back of the camera for helping him compose his great scenes that he shot with his film cameras. So I think that's where I really got inspired to take my photography to a different level. And, working from instant film into, the regular film cameras. And then, I took a break when film started to get really difficult. And then when the better digital cameras began to make their presence known, I picked one up and got really inspired again to do photography. So curiosity, patience, and passion. Always keep those in your mind. So, basically a digital camera is a hardware device that takes pictures and stores them. Many of the cameras and phones today, you all know this, you can take great videos with them. You can do an awful lot with the smartphones today, especially the newer advances that you're seeing now from Samsung and iPhones. It's just incredible what they're able to do. And you're going to see a lot of photography competitions today are just based on, using an iPhone or a smartphone of some sort. But unlike the incoming picture that hits the image sensor, the chip, it breaks it up into pixels rather than in silver film or conventional film where it actually causes a chemical reaction to begin, the photon hitting a silver halide particle and causing this image to be formed. So it's very different. But, the end result is a photograph. The types of cameras that are available today, these are just some of the cameras that are available today. Because the advances that are being made in this area, it's just crazy. So you have bridge cameras, which is basically a DSLR camera, but it has a fixed lens. It comes with only one lens. You can't change lenses on it. The beauty of those kinds of cameras are, especially the Sony line, and Canon and Nikon also have them, where you don't have to carry around a lot of lenses because they'll take a range of like 24 millimeters out to 600. I haven't seen many go beyond that. But the beauty of a DSLR is if you want to go into portraiture mode or something like that, you can change the lenses and so forth. It may cost you a lot more money to own a DSLR and all the lenses you might need. But then again, you got these crazy new smartphones that do a lot of things. So, and more recently in the last few years, you're starting to see what they call full frame 35 millimeter type cameras. All the way down to what I'd call a point and shoot. I have point and shoots that I carry with me all the time. And in some cases, when you're in low light situations or when you have to have slow shutters, you want to have a tripod. So getting a tripod is really important. So this is some of the basic equipment that you'll need to get out there and take great pictures. So what we're going to talk about a little bit today, you'll see a little dial on the top of the camera. There are several, maybe a dozen in some cases, different options that you have to use. But I basically just use the 5 that are shown there. P is programmable, S is for shutter, A is for aperture, M for manual, and then the automatic setting. And if you're new to using, a new digital camera, the auto setting works just fine. And then when you want to go out and learn about, P and S and A and M, you go out and you practice. You read your manual and you learn about it. And today's DSLRs have so many functions that the silver cameras didn't have, like taking 12 frames per second. You couldn't do that with film. You'd never be able to advance it fast enough. So anyway, I think digital photography today, it gives us so much more latitude in making great images that you couldn't get with silver-based photography. So I'm just going to cover these few things. I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but the aperture determines the size of the opening that allows the light to enter the camera. And in a future slide, we're going to see how that actually works. Shutter speed determines the amount of time that light is allowed to enter through the lens for exposure. The ISO setting, it's basically this. If it relates to anything in film, it's the speed of, back in the day when it was film, you had different ISO speed films, 50, 60, 100, 400, 600, 1,000, and so forth. Well, with digital cameras, you can go up to, I think some cameras now, 20,000, maybe even more. And that really helps you when you're in a low light situation. As you go up in ISO, you may go up in noise and little specks in your photography, but those you can clean up in the digital darkroom, which we'll talk about later. Exposures and stops. This is used to increase or decrease exposure. You increase or decrease the exposure in order to lighten or darken the image. And for me, generally when I'm shooting landscapes, I'll shoot 1 or 2 stops below what the automatic setting might be in order. I'd rather have more information in that photo, deeper saturated colors, rather than overexposing where once you lose that information, it's gone, you can't get it back. But with the digital darkroom, again, if you're underexposing, you can bring some of that back out in some of the shadow adjustments and the brightness adjustments that you have. And with some of these cameras, you can also what they call bracket exposures. So you can push the one button and it'll take 3 or 4 different exposures for you so that you can later on decide which one you like the best. Aperture and shutter speed work together. You often hear about something called f-stop. Well, f-stop is very important, as you'll see in the next couple of slides. It refers to the depth of field. So if you have a very low f-stop, you typically use that for portraiture photography, something that's close to you, because everything in the background will be blurred. But if you want more information in that photograph, then you probably want to set it to f16 or f8 and above, at least. So it's going to control the amount of light coming into the camera, which is what that image is going to look like. So here is what aperture and shutter speed look like in a diagram. Aperture is clearly the most crucial setting in photography. It is possible that the single most setting of all, because depth of field and exposure have such major effects on what that image is going to finally look like. So you can see there, large versus small aperture. The f2 is very wide open, where you get out to f16, it's very closed. So for f2.8, great for portraiture. It's going to be up in front of you. It's going to be a perfectly good focus, and it's going to get enough light to really expose that subject matter really well. And again, to the right, you can see f2 versus f10 in a camera diagram. This is the triangle I was talking about. This is what I do when I go out, when I shoot. I'm thinking about if it's a planned photo shoot, I'll think about what I'm going to need, whether it's going to be less exposure, more exposure, a slower shutter, or a faster shutter. And when you go to a slower shutter, you're going to need that tripod. So just keep that in mind. Always have that with you if you're going into a low light situation. I do a lot of my photography is handheld, because what I'll do is I'll set the ISO up a little bit higher so that I'm getting more speed out of the camera in the way it's going to take the image. So one thing I want to mention right now, I know I'm going a little bit quickly here, but I'm going to make this presentation available in PDF form so that you can actually, I'll email it to you if you want, and my email address will be there later, so that you can actually have this presentation to use as a reference later on, because there's a lot of detail. So the exposure triangle is extremely important, something that you want to really learn and to take to heart, and it'll help you make you a better photographer and get better images. So for me, there's basically 5 styles of digital photography: landscape, portraiture, documentary, that's kind of what a newspaper might do, abstract photography, sometimes called non-objective, experimental, and so forth. And I love to do a lot of that. And you can do double exposures within some cameras and some you can't, but you can also go into the digital darkroom and create some great images. And for a lot of the world today, it's wildlife photography. I mean, this is where you need those better cameras where you can shoot 10 to 15 frames per second and watch an eagle go through the sky and be able to capture every flutter of the wing. It's just amazing what some of these new cameras can do. Landscape photography is what most of us do. We like to go out and shoot what we see in the environment, or even in our backyard. Portraiture photography is, it's a photo of a person or an animal. And it's, you'll see a lot of that in today's world. People do headshots for their businesses and so forth and so on. So I'm going to give you some examples of those down the road here a little bit. Photographic imagery, I break it down into 3 different areas. What you got is color photography, which is full spectrum of light, the same light that you see with your eye. Black and white or monochromatic is basically where you take the color away. And then something that a lot of people are doing today is just infrared. Infrared is an interesting type of photography. It's not what you consider like infrared imagery where you can see a person's heat signature. It's nothing to do with that. the infrared is just beyond the visible range of your eye in the visible spectrum. Like for instance, it's roughly 300 to 700, I forget the term for it, but just beyond the visible range, the electromagnetic spectrum, sorry. So it goes from 300 up to about 700, which is what you see. Infrared goes beyond that, starts around 720. And the way you do this, you could actually put a filter on your lens, but when you do that, you're not going to be able to see through the camera because it's going to block out all of the visible light. So most people take the camera that they'd like and send it off and have the infrared sensor or filter put in by the sensor so that you can actually see the image and then photograph it without any difficulty. It gives you some amazing clarity, and you can do it with what they call full color or black and white. And I'll show you some images of that in a minute. So for landscapes, these are two typical landscapes, and probably any of you from Cape Ann know exactly what that subject matter is. But you know, it's beautiful stuff, and you can take different exposures to get different effects in the landscape. The image on the right, that was done with it was low light, believe it or not. The sun hadn't quite got up yet, and I had that on a tripod. The one on the left, I actually shot with a cell phone, believe it or not, on my boat. So you can get really, really good photos, landscapes, using whether a camera on the right or even a cell phone. Portraiture, my favorite dog on the left, and that's shot at f8. You can see that the background is all fuzzy and not there. And then my favorite, Cooper's hawk, which stood there and let me photograph him or her for quite a long time. And again, I set the camera so that I was shooting in a portraiture mode where the background was somewhat fuzzy. So that's what a portraiture, because you really want to focus on the subject matter itself, not the landscape where it's a whole lot of different parts of the image. Documentary, this is a photograph I shot in black and white back several years ago when they were rebuilding the breakwater in Rockport Harbor. Somebody in the newspaper called me and asked me if I would go shoot some of this big machine they had out there. So I went out and did a few shots of it. So basically, it's not so much a landscape or anything else. It's just kind of telling a story of what's going on. Here are two samples of multiple images blended together in Photoshop. So there are other ways of doing abstract photography. You know, you can do that with a slow shutter on the water or the sky or whatever you'd like to do. But there's the tree that Mari really likes. That's the tree at Back Beach with some of the rocks. And then a sunrise shot that I shot somewhere else and blended the two together to create this abstract art. And the one on the right is the little bit of the tree on the right, the moon that I shot separately. So there's three different images that I put together to create that scene. It's digital art. And then you got the great old wildlife. My friend seal over there called Blue Gaze, that seal saw me and took off like a bat and went down. I was fortunate enough to have my camera at the ready and I was able to get that shot. And then the one on the left, I kept asking this bighorn sheep up in Glacier National Park to open her eyes or his eyes. I think it was a boy. And he finally did. But anyway, I love this shot because it's just crazy. This, again, shot in portraiture mode. And you can see that the background is all fuzzy. And here's a sample of infrared imaging. The one on the left is that false color that I talked about. And that basically, you can set up the white balance on the camera to deliver different colors. I personally like setting my camera on black and white or monochrome to deliver the black and white image that's infrared. You notice that the trees tend to be white. So whatever will reflect infrared energy will show up white. Anything that'll absorb energy like rocks or water will show up much darker. But notice the clarity is just so different because you're really shooting with one single wavelength of light. So you don't have the scatter of all the other wavelengths that will add some, take away from the perfectly beautiful image. But the magic hours in photography to me is first thing in the morning and the last thing at night, what I call dawn and dusk, the magic hours. The photo on the left, everybody probably recognizes Good Harbor. That's the old bridge, and that was a sunrise before the sun came up. I ran down, when I saw this cloud starting, I had got my camera and I ran down or drove down to Good Harbor because the wind was still, the tide was up, and the clouds were just red and blue. It's just an amazing shot. You can see the reflection on the water. So, dawn is just a great time to get out and practice your skills. And in this case, I don't remember if I had a tripod with me. I don't think I had time to get it set up. So a lot of times this magical color that you see in the morning, it only lasts, a couple of minutes at best, and then it'll go gray or just die out completely. In this particular day, it went gray very, very fast. You can start to see it in some of the clouds. And then the other great stuff is, the shooting it in the magic hours just after the sun goes down and the moon is coming up. You get the sun reflecting off the moon and you get that beautiful. This is a super moon that was shot a few years ago. That's Rockport, Sandy Bay. I think what we're looking at there is the north light, and then the house on the point goes through the gap there, at Rockport, Sandy Bay. So magic hours, dawn and dusk, it's a good time to go out and practice your skills using a tripod or a higher ISO where you can use the camera in a handheld position. You can actually, with some of the new Samsung and iPhones, get a pretty good picture that way. You may not get the magnification factor that you get from a lens that you can adjust, but you'll still get a pretty darn good photo. So the art of photography comes up in a few ways. I look at contrast, which is the difference between the light and the dark. And then the other one is something called the rule of thirds, because in a lot of landscape images, you've got more than one thing that's in that image that's of interest, like a lighthouse or this or that. And you don't always have to center the subject. Move it to the right or to the left, especially if there's something else in that image that might be of interest. Point of view. Are you looking up? Are you looking down? Are you looking at the left, below the eye level? The point here is, again, to look at the entire image that's in front of you, what you're looking at. Is there something more interesting to one side or the other? And always remember to turn your head and look behind you. I don't know how many times I've been on a hike and looked behind me, and there it is. That's a better image. And the other thing, depending on what it is, get in close. A lot of these cameras have these close-up features too, where you can set you can even do that with an iPhone today, set it up for a close-up. So proximity is important depending on what that image is and what you want to generate from that image. So here's some examples. First one is contrast. This is a quarry wall reflection in Rockport. And you can see the difference, how this image really jumps out at you because of the difference in contrast. You got the light reflecting off the granite surfaces, and that depression in the wall where that tree is growing is very dark. So that's how contrast can help you in getting a much better image. So you think about that when you shoot it, and that's where you're going to be setting the camera to produce that kind of an image. If you have it overexposed, that shadow detail is going to be gone. It's going to be blown out, and the wall is going to be blown out as well. Rule of thirds. This is could have been yesterday. I was down there yesterday. Anyway, so I wanted to take a shot at the lighthouse, but when I got there, I saw these waves breaking off to the left. So I set my composition up in using the idea of rule of thirds, so that there's some interest on the left side, in the lower right, and as well as a lighthouse. So think about that when you're composing a shot, to look at the image area that you're looking at, and the value of the camera, whether you're not focused out, you're at 20 millimeters or you're at 500 millimeters. So take a good look at that. That's something that Ansel Adams really, when I remember that meeting with him, he talked about this rule of thirds thing. So I always had it in my head later that he would look at that, that scene that he was going to shoot and set up his camera and then shoot it with a Polaroid to make sure he got what he wanted. So rule of thirds, very important. And now point of view. This is, looking up, looking down, looking to the left, looking at the right. I could have shot the whole scene, with the motif up, but I liked the reflection more. So I just shot the reflection. Sometimes you can shoot the whole image and then in Photoshop, turn it around and crop it so that you get what you want. But sometimes it's more value to take the shot as you like it and as you see. Point of view, I saw this old tree leaf that was stuck in the ice, walking in the woods, and the whole scene looked pretty good. But then that where the light was bouncing off that leaf, I got the camera in really close and shot it. So proximity, depending on what the scene is presenting and what you want to produce from that scene. The bubbles in the ice were pretty cool too. So now, once you've captured that image, what are you going to do with it? The old wet chemistry darkroom, you could do a lot of things like dodging and cropping and other kinds of things you could do. But today's digital darkroom with the software that's available, it's amazing what you can do in that digital darkroom. You can do enhancements to saturation, ambiance, bring out shadows, take shadows down, bring the whole image up in light, or whatever you'd like to do. And it's worth your time, even if you're taking pictures with your cell phone, to have a photo processing, the digital darkroom someplace, whether it be on your iPad or your iPhone or your desktop at home, to be able to take that image and learn to use these softwares. It's just amazing what you can do. And there are some people that I know that they can do things with this software that I haven't even begun to even explore. So, it's one of the great things about digital photography is that you have this digital darkroom in the way of Photoshop and other apps. And some of the other things that are available to use, in addition to the Adobe software, the Creative Cloud, Lightroom, and Elements, and so forth, are some of these desktop and mobile devices. One that I like a lot is called Snapseed. I believe it still is a free app. And it's amazing what you can do with that app. You got to, learn to play with it a little bit and understand it. But you can take a not so great image because, you took it with your cell phone and you didn't have a chance to adjust exposure or anything like that. But you can go into these digital darkrooms and fix a lot of those not so good things that you like about the image. Nick software, I think it's DxO that owns it now, or Google, or somebody owns it. It used to be free. It'll set up with your desktop software like Adobe and some others. It's great because with the Nick software, it offers this little pointer that you can put on an image where the whole image might be good, but the face is like in a shadow. You can put this little circle on that person's face and bring out either color or light. So I like it. I use it quite a bit when I'm processing my work. Other standalone, ON1, Corel Paint Shop, Capture One Pro, and there's a whole bunch of others. The thing is, if you do get one of these software packages, you got to learn to use it. It takes, especially with the Adobe software, it takes a bit of time to really get good at it. But some of the basic functions you can learn in an afternoon. This is the stuff. All these, there's 5 or 6 different ways that you can store images, and they have different characteristics. A TIFF, TIFF, it's a tagged image file format. This is an incredibly large image, and it has much of the information that you normally wouldn't see in a JPEG. But a lot of people save files that way, so if you're going to end up having to make a larger copy of it, you can store it that way. The camera today will take a JPEG and a RAW file. I don't know of a camera that does TIFF, but maybe there are. Anyway, but most of the photos that you're going to take out there are going to be what's called JPEGs, which is a Joint Photographic Experts Group. I don't know where the name came from. It doesn't really matter. But most digital cameras store photos in the JPEG format so that you can use them later when you're processing, and then you can use other formats to save them and use them later. A lot of stuff that you see online today are GIF files. They're smaller files. Can't do a whole lot with them, but it's just a way of storing a file. PNG is another one that you'll see in portable network graphics that you'll see in print someplace or online. For photographs, PNG is not so good because it creates a larger file, but with some text or some line art, but it's not good for if you wanted to take that file and make a print out of it, to put in a frame someplace is not so good. When I shoot both JPEG and RAW, so I'm creating 2 files, and I'll use both of them in my processing later. The raw files are on the order of 10 or 20 times larger than the JPEG file. But it's, it's the unprocessed data that comes with that capture in your CCD. There's a lot of different formats, and every company has their own proprietary format. I started my photography career, with instant film using Polaroid cameras, moved to silver using, different companies, Nikon, Pentax, and a few others. And then when I moved to digital, I started with Canon, and now I'm a Sony all the way. I love Sony products. I'm used to using them. And to me, I think they're the cutting edge as digital photography moves more forward in time. They're a large company. They have a lot of great scientists that work on this electronics, and nothing wrong with Canon, Fuji, or Nikon. But I don't know, if you're in the market for looking at a camera, take the time to look at what features you really want. So what are you going to do with that image once it's in your computer or on your phone? You want to print it, you want to frame it, and so forth. I'm in the business of selling my photography, showing my photography at different places. So over time, I do my own printing at home. I have an Epson large format printer. Canon makes good printers. You can use papers, you can use canvas. Epson, Red River, and Breathing Color, to me, are the three best paper companies out there. I like Red River. It's very good. Its quality is as good as anybody, and their price is a little better, and they offer a wide range of different formats. If you're not into printing yourself, we have a great shop in town, Cape Angie Clay. James and Anna they're incredible people to work with. They can produce images on paper, canvas, and metal now. And I don't know if any of you have seen some of the metal prints that they'll blow you away. They're so beautiful. My printer will actually do metal, but I don't dare put one in there. I don't even want to take a chance. And because I do sell a lot of my own photography, I'm into framing my own pieces, and there's a number of companies that I buy framing supplies. I don't necessarily buy the frame as it is. I'll buy parts, I'll buy mats, I'll buy backboards, and I use Frame Destination and American Frame. They've been very good overall. And if you're not into doing your own frames, we have two great frame shops on Cape Ann, Hershey Frame Shop in Rockport, and Northeast Frame Shop in Manchester. They're both very outstanding, and their prices are reasonable. So exhibiting your work, if it's going to be in your home, you don't need to worry about it. But believe me, on Cape Ann and in the general area in the Northeast here, we have several beautiful places where you can show your work and get out there. The Newburyport Art Association is a very top-notch art association. You don't need to be juried in, you just join. They've got a great photography interest group, and they meet twice a month, talk about photography, critique each other's work. And the Newburyport Art Association runs, I don't know, someplace around a dozen shows a year where you can bring in your work and put it on the wall and hopefully sell a little bit. In Gloucester, you get Rocky Neck Art Colony, a great art colony. Again, you can join that group without any jury process and begin to show work within their shows that they put on. Because of COVID, there hasn't been a lot of that, but they're beginning to get open again, and we're going to start seeing a lot more of that. The Rockport Art Association has been around for a million years, a long time. And they have artists and photographers. It's a jury process, and it meets once a year. And so if anybody's interested in possibly joining the Art Association and needing more information, feel free to contact me or contact them directly. Locally, we have many, many shops that are very much open to showing work for you. They want to decorate their walls. Cape Ann Coffees is one that I show up. The hospital, the Edison Gilbert is another one. And there are several galleries that you might be able to get involved with. Another way of getting your work out there is through social media platforms. Instagram, Facebook are the two that I use mostly. I'm sure there's a few others that other people use. And for me, I have a photography website, and it's skipmontelophotos.com. Going back to Cape Angie Clay, if you do, he has a method for actually setting up pages for you in your work. If you do business with him, and he can actually sell work for you directly. I don't sell a lot of work on my photography website. It's more people to look at what I've got, and if they're interested, they can call me, text me, or email me. There's my contact information. I'm going to leave that up for a minute so that if you want to copy that, again, if you email me, I will send you this presentation in PDF form so that you can use it as a reference later on. I did go fast, and if I didn't want to take up all your time going through things in great detail, where you can take that PDF and use it yourself later on. I'm on Instagram at Skip Montello and on Facebook at Skip Montello. And I know some of you are friends on Facebook with many of you, but feel free to email me and I'll be happy to send you this presentation in PDF form. I'm gonna finish my part of it before we get into any questions with a video of some recent work that highlights a lot of what we just talked about in landscapes or portraitures and so forth, just to cover it. And it's got a nice sound to it. I hope you like it.
Skip, that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for everyone to take your time, and hopefully I was able to get some of it across to you.
We really appreciate it, Skip, and we love your work. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on this beautiful day. Skip Montello, fantastic photographer here on Cape Ann. We look forward to seeing your work, Skip.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mari, and thanks, everyone.